Review Commission?
We have no members of the public.
Well, I feel that that may be a trend for the summer. The weather is nice and there may be other things that people want to do. I think we should clearly do one of these where all of our cameras are outside. On that basis, Lauren, I guess we have the minutes. Does anyone have a comment, or can I entertain a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
And Bob, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Joan, I'll assume that you're waving into the ether, but at the very least we can pass it with 4. And then I think our next item is to continue what we were doing. So Lauren, I was hoping if you could continue with the, oh, hold on, the screen share.
And just let Liz in, and then just get
There
this.
you go. Hi, Liz.
Going.
Hey, sorry about that. Couldn't find the
problem.
link. Apologies.
Liz, I had sent you a note. I don't know if you received it. Unfortunately, I have a conflict today, so I need to leave right at 5:30. And I was hoping you could continue and lead this happy band, through our paragraph by paragraph review once I go.
Absolutely, I'll do my best.
Why? Thank you. And I'm gonna get all those emails. Yeah, Noreen was famous for that. If I wouldn't be at a meeting, she'd be like, "Boy, it ran so much better."
Yeah. I don't know. Hard act to follow.
Excellent. So I apologize for my double scheduling.
Okay. You guys see both documents?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Get us back to where we were.
And actually, just while you're doing that, just remind me, do we have the next meeting scheduled, or is that one of our to-do items today?
That is one of the to-do. We do not have anything scheduled after tonight.
So why don't we take a moment and just do that while we're still all together? I wanted to get your sense. I think you guys are probably also concurring with me that I'm finding this process to be incredibly productive. So maybe before we bring in more folk, we should do a couple more of these. What do we think?
Yeah, I agree.
I agree also.
Yeah, I think this is just very helpful. How about well, when would you like to do it? We could try. Do you want to go to every other week since it's summer? I mean, we're actually, to be honest, making some pretty good progress. Do you want to try for June 1st and 15th? Do those work? Do you want to shift the day?
Tuesdays work well. I think this day and time work well for me at least. And I think every other week would be good.
Yeah.
Agree.
So somewhere I know.
So the
Joan,
first and the first and the 15 work?
I'm sorry, Noreen.
Are we talking first and 15th?
Yeah, would that
Okay.
work out okay for you?
Yeah, works for me.
All right, so let's set those 2 times
well,
and let go. Oh, go.
Sorry.
Oh, Lauren, don't be a downer.
I'm not available on the 15th. I actually have a planned vacation day that day.
The nerve.
I know.
I'm sorry, you have a well-deserved planned vacation day. So let's stick with the first. Lauren, are you gone that whole week or?
No, so I could do, Thursday nights at 5 are really good for me. So if you wanted to do that week on the 17th at 5, would that work?
That works for me.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody else?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll do the 1st and the 17th. That will
Could I just
represent
ask, when is graduation this year? I'm just curious.
The
Does anybody-
11th.
Okay, all set. Okay, 17's fine.
Okay. So we'll schedule that. That will make the least that I will have seen you guys in any 4-week period since in the last several months. So I don't know what to, if you'd all send me a little picture so I could just leave it on my desktop, I'd appreciate it. Okay. I don't think we have any others. And just to be clear, we'll just continue this process for those couple of meetings. I know we have some other groups we wanted to talk to, but I really think we should continue march our way until we get to the end. It's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay, in that case, Lauren, where were we?
Right. We left off at the annual budget referendum, section 3.2. we did make some changes. We talked about that 25th day of May and potentially changing it, but we didn't actually take the 25th day of May out of the charter language. You'll see on the left-hand side is the current draft with changes we're making. On the right-hand side is that analysis document with our notes. So now we get to the second paragraph under section 3.2 regarding posting, which I have a note here of some further guidance I'm going to look up for you guys. And we didn't make any specific changes to that section at the last meeting. I think with the understanding that depending on what I came back to with state guidelines, we would come back to this paragraph here. So that'll be something that we can review on like the second run through of the document. There are several places where I was going to give you guys more guidance with town staff and state statutes. So we get to this trailing third and fourth paragraphs, one sentence each under section 3.2, that the Board of Selectmen may add and publish notice thereof of additional items to the referendum ballot. I don't think you need to do anything with that, but that's just my opinion. And then this last paragraph is kind of where we left off. Whether or not I think this language needs to be in the charter, I think was the question that you guys had at the very end of our last meeting, that the vote should be by machine. Joe, we can't hear you. I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you.
Oh, well, I'll put an end to that, Joy. So I think that was my question, I believe, which is there something inadvertent about machine or the language that if we didn't need it, like, does that imply physical machine? We shouldn't redo the charter if suddenly we're all voting by iPhone, I think was my comment. And I have one other question, Lauren. If you're going back for sort of staff comment, I'm still stuck in the very first paragraph on the 25th. And I know we talked in and around that, but I'm still wondering about removing the date requirement entirely. So I wouldn't mind getting some feedback on that, because I think we talked about guiding them earlier, which I agree with. But I'm just stuck on the date, by town charter. If we had a tornado hit us on the 24th and couldn't hold it to the 26th, why is that a charter violation? And maybe how it cause other problems.
Okay.
So I thought, let's ask the people that actually do it.
Yeah, so that is our drop dead date for printing the bills.
For today.
Yes, exactly. So it becomes one of those things. Yeah. Under today's parameters, that is the drop dead date. But yes, things could change in 5 years from now. We may vote completely differently.
Right. Okay. So I would just ask you to put a note just to check the mechanic on that. If we put in guidance for earlier, which I think was Dave's
yes.
point.
Which is what was added.
Yeah. Do we really need a hard date at all? And are we just doing a disservice at some level?
Yeah, definitely something to consider.
It seems to be a level of detail that I don't know if it belongs in the charter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with where we ended to say, we set the expectation. I mean, because I think that to the extent that, and Bob, I know this has been your point, that the charter's communication for people that come to town and like, what? What do we do? That would be helpful.
Okay. I'll go back and get some more info on that and bring you guys suggestions on how we could potentially change this paragraph too.
And Lauren, we were also talking about whether or not the Board of Finance and obviously the staff would need more time, or maybe we could do it earlier to give them more time. You're looking at Guilford does the referendum, a month earlier than we do.
Yeah, and so that was where you guys added this sentence. It is expected that the referendum be held by the last week in April. However, it shall be held no later than the 25th day of May. So that was what we did there.
Okay.
I think it just comes down to future-proofing the charter and what needs to be charterized.
Just for clarification, the May 25th is just in order to print the invoices.
Yep.
That's when it has to be done, right? So,
Yes.
but is there any other significance to that date, or is it just the printing needs?
No, it's just the printing needs. So if the referendum is held on the 25th day of May, then we would set the mill rate on the 26th. And then they would not be able to order the bills, to run the bills through QDR and have them printed until probably the 28th. And then they would have 3 days to get them in the mail.
Right. So when all this is done with Bitcoin back to Apple Pay, then none of this will be necessary.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
So is everyone comfortable with well, this area is not decided, at least the way we framed it up? All right, Lauren, lead us on.
Great. So then again, we just go back to these 2 last paragraphs and just considering, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about this anymore tonight, or if you want to just me to make a note about this language of the vote should be by machine.
Yeah, my recommendation is to remove it unless there's a good reason to leave it. You know,
will
maybe,
just-
Same here.
yeah, I don't know if there's better language. I mean, what else would we vote by? I guess voice vote.
Paper, but
Yeah,
Oh, sure, paper, yeah.
yeah, but isn't that a machine vote if we run it
Well-
through the optical scanner?
paper tally, because you can do it as like a hard copy that we would do it at a town meeting, which it wouldn't go into a machine, but I will just leave myself a note.
Guys, I hate to mention this, when I was an election judge in Pennsylvania, we counted the ballots, paper,
Right.
no machine, just,
Yeah, but
after
that
the
also
polls
that
closed,
also
we
sounds
counted them.
wrong. You know, you have a power outage during a weird things happen in elections. You have a power outage and the registrars want to have everyone fill out their name with a Xerox of their license. I mean, now is it illegal? It just feels like a weird thing.
Joe, I remember, this is going back years ago, I wasn't a selectman, that we used to go to town meeting to vote to go to referendum, not to vote whether or not. And I wonder at that point, could we have voted just to have approved whatever it was that night without going to referendum? I told you Garvin Point, I don't believe went to referendum. I think it was voted on town meeting. And they voted, they were so clearly for it. They did not vote to go to referendum. I could be wrong, but I recall that. I recall Don LaChance getting up and talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know that would be possible for the budget the way we have it. This is the budget section. So I
It's all referendums, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're
Okay.
into our next section.
So petition for referendum to reconsider town meeting action. I'm
we
gonna,
went through this, didn't we, Lauren?
in a,
because we-
yes, so you'll see my note here that the entire section should be revised to conform with section 2.1.4.4. So if you guys are okay with moving on, I will go back into the draft later and copy and paste section 2.1.4.4.
Well, could I
Let me
ask
go back up.
why don't we just say according to the procedure of 2.1.4?
Yeah,
I'm all for that.
Yeah, let's reference when we can, consistent with the procedure of, and then just kill the language. That way some future charter commission or if we end up making a small change, we don't end up with parallel provisions.
Mhm.
Hey, Matt.
Okay,
Hey,
sorry,
Matt.
I'm late.
Matt, I was telling everybody, unfortunately, I need to leave quickly at 5:30 and Liz will take over then.
Okay.
Actually, so why is this section, even if this section is essentially identical to 2144, why is it even, like, what's the difference?
The header. So 2.1.4.4 is to petition to a town meeting in general, and 3.3 is to petition for a referendum to reconsider something that happened at a town meeting.
So can we rename 2144 petition town meeting and referendum to reconsider?
So the articles are different. Article 3 you'll see is elections and referenda, and then Article 2 is town meeting, I think. Form of government town meeting.
I
So-
think going into the user-friendly view, I think it's not so bad to have a section that says you can do this, you know, because people will read the budget section, right? So you can do this, but the procedure you'll use is the same as 2.1. Blah, 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 blah. You know,
Yeah, it does signal that, yes, this is a possibility if you don't like what happened.
yeah, I'm just reminded by, you know, the sections will hit where it was clear a charter review commission in antiquity, like blew the proofreading, you know, and we just don't want to have, we want to make it as simple for the next group as possible.
And then
And-
Lauren, were the things that were in here under this section, for example, under F, where it said the town clerk may need more time than this, prior suggestion was 15 to 30 days. Does that transfer over?
It's a good question.
So we gave it town clerk within 10 we changed it to 10 business days under 2.1.4.4 D.
I think the considerations would be identical, wouldn't it? It's the town clerk who has to verify the signatures, whether you're reconsidering a referendum or you're in this section. It's the same problem, right?
Yeah,
Is there anything about the timing that makes it different? Is there any additional pressure?
so I'm just quickly looking too, because they're slightly different.
They are slightly different.
F and G between,
Because one of them is about the percentage, right?
yeah, so 2.1.4.4 F gives 30 calendar
30
days for the
days.
certification of the petition for the Board of Selectmen to call the town meeting. The current 3.3 F says
5 days.
that the Board of Selectmen shall fix the time of the special referendum no less than 10 and no more than 20 days after certification. So they are slightly different. So 2.1.4.4 F does not say how much time the Board of Selectmen has to call the meeting, but 3.3 F says the Board of Selectmen only has 5 calendar days to call the referendum. So I think we should probably look at these two items, F and G here.
Well, isn't it within the interest of the Board of Selectmen to always call the meeting as early as possible
Yeah,
under this new section? Because they have a budget. Like, I get that this section's saying you have to do it fast, but I think
Yeah.
they need to do it fast.
correct.
So, why would we delay it? They need an operating budget. Unless there's some, inverse logic that it prevents the Board of Selectmen from being delayed because by charter they have to.
Yeah. That's the only thing I can think is that it must have been input into section 3.3 to make sure that the Board of Selectmen essentially got to the next referendum date within 30 days total. Whereas 2.1.4.4F says that they have 30
Yeah.
calendar days to call the town meeting, not to hold the town meeting. So either we change 2.1.4.4F to incorporate some of the sentiment behind 3.3F, or we take some of the language from 3.3F and we include it up here after this clause.
Yeah, I was thinking the latter,
Okay,
you know, so we could say we'll follow the procedure, you know, accept that, and then let's take a look at G.
okay.
That upon ratification, the Board of Selectmen shall call it within such and such. And then let's take a look at section G. And do we know off the top of our head what 7-7 is? Isn't that the general powers? And 7. Just grabbing a look now.
Yep.
I think that's just the general meeting provision.
While you're looking at that, I'm going to apologize in advance for this stupid question, but so Lauren, section F, within 30 calendar days, the selectmen will call a special town meeting. So call means schedule, or does
Yes.
call means convene?
No, call
Good
means
question.
schedule, and that was the clarification I was trying to give just now. Call is to schedule the matters of the meeting. So I mean, they can call it within 30 days, but then maybe they're not holding it for 60. Whereas the current 3.3F says that it has to be held within a certain time frame. And yes, section 7.7 is just conduct of meetings of towns and other municipal corporations, voting by ballot or voting machine.
Yeah, by the way,
Very
a little fun point on 7.7. I think that language about machine was meant to respond to this, because I think they're clearly trying to distinguish paper ballots from voting machines, but I'm not actually sure that that's what they mean. that you could have a paper ballot recorded through a machine, like the example we brought up earlier. So I don't even. I think we should zot that language anyway. It doesn't make sense. So in this piece, then I think the question's really, is there something about the difference that's really important? I mean, my recollection, and Noreen, subject to your if you're there, piece, or Joan, is that when a budget goes down, everyone moves as quickly as possible.
Right.
I have to say, I mean, my opinion is that the budget could have a special treatment in the sense that there is an expedited, that we're charterizing, an expedited approach to it, as opposed to, the meetings, just because of the gravity of the situation. I would be okay with having it different, but I could go either way at the same time if we want to make them.
Yeah, I'm literally wondering if Matt, your first selectman, if there would be some benefit to you, because let's go from the framing that you want to hold it fast, and the fact the charter says that you must hold it fast means that some other group can't get in the way, the Board of Finance, you know what I mean, that that by the fact that you have to do it. Bob's consulted others in this process, you had staff, but that there's something about that just means, hey, the Board of Selectmen's in charge and it's going to be quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and the flip side is too, the referendum to reconsider a town meeting, or, for the town meeting, that maybe you do want more time for that. Maybe you do want to have more consideration, talk to more people. But there's actually a reason behind having a difference for both of these.
Yeah, I think, Matt, I think that's a really good point, that the
Agree.
budget is a different type of animal.
Well,
is.
And for another dispute, you may want to say, look, let's wait 3 months and do this study to find out X, Y, and Z, that there's no need to push it immediately. With a budget, you really need to do.
Maybe if somebody petitioned for the town meeting or for something like that, then the Board of Selectmen would want to go back and talk to more people before calling the meeting. As opposed to the budgets, we have to get everybody back together right now and figure this out.
well, and this isn't if the budget fails. I mean, this is a petition
Right.
of voters. So it's different than the town needing to call a second referendum because the budget didn't pass.
True, but even with a petition, then a group of people feel that something's wrong, or that they want to contest it.
Yeah. I'm so sorry if I could interrupt very briefly. Liz, thank you very much. And I'm so sorry to depart, but I mean, I'm personally, fine with having different timeframes as long as we do our best to consolidate the procedure. Anyway, sorry to have to depart, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Take care. Take care,
Take
Joe.
care. Bye, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Can I just add to what Matt brought up? And when right away, when we know we have to kind of be limited with time, it falls on because it's a budget issue. So maybe that's the reason we do separate the two.
Mhm.
Town meeting with a potentially going to referendum should not be rushed. Years ago, I brought this up one other time. Years ago, we were doing, it was when Stop and Shop wanted to expand to a super Stop and Shop. And it meant changing Scranton Park. It was a big deal. And it went down. And it went down just for political reasons. There were some people that didn't like the first selectman. It was ridiculous. And the misinformation out there. Did you know that Stop and Shop has a famous rock called Samson Rock?
Mhm.
And that's what came out. It was one, person that's into preservation found out about this rock. And all of a sudden we had to save the rock, which we did. But I'll tell you, it was an organization that's sort of defunct now called Madison Taxpayers, who was able to get a petition so we could go back and really get the correct information out. And we weren't able to do that as a selectman. I was a brand new selectman. I remember when that happened. And it would have been nice to have had the time to correct the misinformation out there. And with the budget, you can't do that.
Right. I agree with you, Nori.
All right, so Lauren, then what we're saying is the one under 2.144.
I'm
Will be
gonna pull
different.
up 2.1.4.4 on the left and 3.3 on the right. And there's actually a couple other differences. So like section A, under 2.1.4.4 just says the petition may be filed by an elector of the town with the town clerk. But you'll see under 3.3 is a little more prescriptive. So I know Joe had a good idea with striking this whole section, but I'm thinking we probably might want to consider not striking it and keeping both sets of lists, but just making sure that the number for petition and is consistent between both sections, and then also just confirming the time frame under F and G.
I would agree with that, Lauren. If we are going to keep them
Yeah.
different, I think it's important. I mean, it does take up considerable real estate, but it is important.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just looking at A between the two documents. I mean, there's very bland language in 2.1.4.4, but in 3.3G, I mean, it gives parameters for how quickly the petition has to be filed after the town meeting action occurs.
So is it fair to say that maybe on that second go round, if there's anything else that you need to pull out,
Mhm.
that's, the difference between the two, but again, going for kind of that long goal of trying to consolidate, but yet keeping the distinctions that benefit, what's between the budget and. And do we need to talk at all about this issue around the percentage of voters at the meeting? Which is under G on the. Where it says prior suggestions were to make this a percentage of voters at the meeting versus that 150.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do just really quickly here is I'm going to just make the changes that we made in 2.1.4.4. So to D, we made it 10 days, 10 business days.
Mhm.
So we'll change this 5 calendar days to 10 business days for 3.3D as well. And then we did not make a definitive determination under G
Right.
about the voters at the meeting. So I'm gonna go back down over here. We agreed to keep 1,200 in item H because we, after the conversation, thought it should be more than the initial 500 signatures under H.
Right.
But for G, we did not
Yeah.
make a determination about that 150 votes. So I'm going to,
So just remove, I thought we were 75 votes. What's the 150 votes? What am I confused about?
Yeah, no,
75 is a quorum for a town meeting. The 150, right now, the current language in both of these items is that if something is petitioned, it has to have at least 150 votes, and there has to be a majority voting in favor out of that 150
Okay.
total
Got it.
votes.
Got it.
So it just doubled, basically, it doubled the quorum.
Actually, Lorna, that's not how I read it.
No?
150 affirmative votes. So
Good point.
that implies that it's, if 150 people show up and all 150 vote the same way, then yes, but it's affirmative votes, not total voters.
So actually, this is one of the spots where it's different, because the current 3.3G just says such referendum, unless a majority of the voters voting thereon shall have voted in favor of overruling an action, provided at least 150 voters are at the meeting. So they actually don't
Right.
match.
So that's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, it's got to be cleaned up.
Yeah, not only do they not match, then it goes back to this, I think, question that we had even with the quorum in the earlier of, do we want to move more towards a percentage versus
Right.
number? So, and it, how much harmony do you want throughout the whole document on those type of things, I guess would be a question. Do you want some
Yeah.
places that say you want X number versus some places say you want a percentage of X?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I would argue against having a percent, only because it adds another layer of, you have to look at how many registered voters there are, and then you'd have to calculate. I mean, in reality, year over year, does it really change the number of registered voters? I mean, if we decide X percent, then I think we should just put in that number as it stands now. That way you don't have to go back every year and look at the number
Figure
of
it out.
registered voters.
Yeah. Okay. All right, anything else in that section?
So are we saying that for something that's been petitioned, we have to have 150 yes votes in order for it to pass, or how did that end up?
It says it both ways.
Right. Are we to make a determination here?
No.
Are we ready? No. I just think that we're talking about overturning some decision that was made. I think there should be some significant support for that change. You just always want to worry about one small special interest group,
Mhm.
25 people.
So Noreen, do you think that that's not enough? Do you think
No, I think-
150?
I think 150 is fine, but it seems like we could go either. It sounds like we just need 150 people there versus 150 people voting yes. I think we got to clarify that.
Oh,
Yes.
I get it. Okay.
And I mean, if you wanted to also keep it consistent with the current sentiment, which is just doubling the quorum of a town meeting, if you're going to change those quorums, that is, the quorum threshold that we have currently, then that number should, or could change in scale to whatever you change the quorum thresholds to further down the charter.
One thing I'll just add with that is we've got to get this through the voters. I assume that's how it's going to work, right? And I don't want one letter to the editor. Isn't it a shame we live our lives? I live my life this way, saying we can't get 75 people here and these changes are ridiculous. They're trying to make it harder for us to have a say. So I just want to be careful because the idea that we don't get enough for a quorum is an issue that people talk about.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not, they're not all bad. But I do worry that if we make that, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal for us to talk about changing it. And I have to ask why. And would we just be really putting up red flags for people not to support our changes?
Yeah, I bet at the same time, 150 affirmative votes, I mean, that's roughly 1% of our town's population. It's not something that's huge,
Right,
especially, I think that, I'm not sure if this is what you're arguing, Noreen, but 150 affirmative votes, should be the threshold.
I agree. I think we should have
Yeah.
a threshold.
But I get it from the optics of it too. I can see how the reasoning gets misconstrued.
I'm really talking about the quorum of a regular meeting. I'm just
Mhm.
but I think of 150 yes votes for something they petitioned to change is not much to ask.
Yeah, I agree, especially when, to get that petition, you need a lot more.
Right. With
Yeah.
the 12.
So do we want to change both of them then to, or, keep 2.1.4.4 for right now? Maybe at some point in time, we'll relook at that 150 number, but the sentiment behind it should be that number equals affirmative votes, not total number of people voting. Is that what we're saying?
I personally like the idea of affirmative votes myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I like as well.
Because think about it, they're overturning something that's been decided. So they should have support for it.
Yeah, and that's what's currently in 2.1.4.4G.
Okay.
So it's not, that is what is currently in
Right,
the first
right.
section, just not here.
Okay.
So instead of saying, provided that at least 150 voters are at the meeting, we're going to say, provided that at least 150, there are at least 150 affirmative votes.
Mhm.
And now, even if you change that 150 number, these two items are the same because that number correlates to affirmative votes, not total number of votes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then H, you're gonna take care of the review of the signatures. So are we down to 3.4?
Three 3.4 voting districts. So the suggestion you'll see is just that perhaps prescribing them by ordinance, because right now there are 2 voting districts, but at some point in time in the future, we may want more. So they either just say, the suggestions were either saying the number of voting districts shall be prescribed by ordinance, or unless otherwise established by ordinance, there shall be at least 2 voting districts in the town.
I personally like that. I like that the charter has kind of a safety net that there will be 2, but that it also gives the Board of Selectmen the opportunity to create more.
If they need them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So we're okay with we're just gonna add an at least there then.
Correct.
yeah. All right, then the board for admissions of electors. There's a strikeout on,
Yeah, it's just going back to some of these other suggestions that we got from town staff that we don't need to reference specific sections of the general statutes because they're all subject to change.
okay,
They're just striking out with the section and then just keeping with the general statutes.
all right. And doesn't look like anything under 3.6, selection for vacancy in the office of the first selectman. So we go down to,
We'll get into that.
Just one quick housekeeping thing. So, 3.6 election, it references provisions of section 4.2.4. And then 4.2.4 says that's indicated in section 3.7. Again, it's just a housekeeping issue, but
Welcome to the 2006 charter.
like a chess game, right? All right, so let's see, 4.2. All right, so it's indicate, oh, yeah. I mean, is there a way to clean that up a little bit?
We just take out as indicated in section 3.7 because there is no section 3.7.
I mean, I guess the reason is would it make sense to have that show up first under the 3.6 and then under 4.2.4 refer back to that one? Does that make sense?
I don't even think we need to circular reference in section 4.2.4 because 4.3.6 just says, hey, go look at this other section. It doesn't give any prescriptive information.
Okay.
The real question is, do you want to make any changes to 3.6 at all or just leave it?
well, again, one question: if the entirety of a certain section is just to reference another section, do we need that section at all?
That's
Right.
a really
You know
good
what I mean?
question.
So I would say just eliminate section 3.6 because it serves no purpose except to,
Take up space.
But Lauren, on the document on the left, what is 4.2.4? Could you just go down to that again?
Yeah, give me one sec. The only thing I can think of, just answering really quickly Dave's question about 3.6 being included at all, is just that the header on section 3 is election and referendum. So that would be a special election that we would hold. And I don't know if that's why prior charter commissions included it under section 3.6. So it's definitely something I can ask the registrars and town clerk if they have any special place in their heart for this language being included under elections and referendum.
That's exactly, that's my line of thinking. I just want to see if 4.2.4 is for specifically dealing with the vacancy of that, whereas 3.6 is the election for the vacancy.
Yes.
So maybe that's the reason why, and it just says, okay, follow that procedure that's outlined later on. Because if somebody was going to go to the charter for this election process, they're going to might be looking right at first select person.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of is that in the past, we've kept it in here because it's specific to that's a
Better.
potential for an election.
Yeah. Well, that does make sense if it's got to stay, or at least there's got to be some acknowledgement under the headers that refer to some of these things that also show up in another place.
Yeah.
But the spirit of Dave's question, I definitely agree with, and that's
too.
it's frustrating when you're reading something and says, okay, no, go somewhere else.
You know what? I can't believe it. I don't know the answer to this. And we most likely went over it, but it's just never happened in all the years. If something happens and our first selectman has to step down or whatever,
Mhm.
the acting selectman takes over, but then we run an election. There's in the charter. I should know this.
Yes. And
Okay, we run an election, right?
that is what 4.2.4 is.
Okay,
It just
got it.
says that the town clerk has to hold
They're right there.
a special election. Yep.
Yeah.
So I
Unless
guess
it's within 90 days of a regular election, then it's just the acting first selectman
Okay,
takes over.
okay. I totally knew that. Good.
So then I guess the question is, if we keep it, or if we have this acknowledgement that it's in 4.2.4, did we decide we were going to keep it under 3.6, or you're going to check, Lauren?
I'm going to
If
check
we
with the
have to.
town clerk and the registrar and just see if there's anything that really makes it necessary to be kept.
Okay.
And just kind of get what their feelings are about it.
Okay, so should we then
We
address
can,
it when we get to the 4 point?
yeah,
Okay,
Right. Well, at least, Liz, we're not gonna have the problem that it refers to it and the number doesn't
Yeah.
exist in the charter. At least that's not gonna happen.
right. Yeah. All right. Section 4. Composition of the Board of Selectmen. So this seems to be a biggie.
Mhm.
For meeting conversation, consider the term lengths of the Board of Selectmen, extending the first selectman term to 4 years, extending all terms to 4 years, staggering.
Go ahead, Liz, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I know that some of you have already kind of voiced some opinions. And so just want to go back and hear what people are thinking now.
Just so you know, we might have said that both Guilford and Durham do have 4-year terms. And actually, they're both relatively new. I think, in the last less than a decade, they switched over. Matter of fact, Guilford just went to 5 selectmen. They had 3 and it was real troublesome. They had trouble with having quorums, having caucusing. And so the 5 worked out better for them, but I know they went to, and I believe they're 4 for all. Yeah, they're 4 for all their selectmen, but I don't think they're staggered, which I think is interesting to look at versus everybody new coming in at the same time. Kind of like that idea.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so Noreen, you've this has been your life. Like, what are your thoughts, as a select person? And then Lauren, as working with them, like, what are your thoughts?
I know that the consistency is everything. I get it. And I'll tell you, I've run 13 times for office and every time it's been for a 2-year stint. So it stinks. But the fact is, I have also been on the side to watch a very ineffective leader do a lot of damage in 18 months to the point where we lost key people. And so I've always said, and I know I'm in the minority here, so I kind of think I'm going to lose this battle, and that's fine. But I just think that I say, I know it's hard to do things in 2 years, but boy, can you do a lot of damage. One of the things I want to bring up when we get to that is the fact of all these different senior staff members we have. In the charter, it says something about they're appointed by the first selectman. We've had in the past someone who, after the election, has gone more than once to senior staff asking for letters of resignation. That has set such a bad morale issue. And when you look at the charter, you can kind of see where they think they can do it. But I would hope through this, we can fix it. But anyway, I've seen the damage done and it really has been to senior staff, but I know the continuity is there too. I'm just worried if the wrong one gets in, we could be a tough 4 years.
So is there a problem with the checks and balances between the selectmen themselves? I mean, is that something that we want to address in case you do get a bad egg in?
So
Well,
Lauren, is there-
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, so is there somewhere where you are able to, fire or get rid of a first selectman? I mean, do you know what type of cause or?
Well, he's
There are
duly elected,
impeachment
duly elected.
procedures in the charter.
Say that again, Bob?
No, you're talking about impeachment procedures.
Yeah. Is that in the charter?
Uh,
No, haven't seen that. I don't know. I don't know. As I've been listening to the conversation, I don't mean just this committee, but
A
people
recall.
who've spoken. I've listened to staff, I've listened to Gus. I realize there's a lot of support for extending it to 4 years, and I get it. I totally get it. It's just that I had 2 experiences where, and I'm one of these people that know how valuable our senior staff is, and I saw what had happened. It was amazing what happened to them in 18 months, how they became so dysfunctional over this. So I just worry. I just worry because let's face it, politics is politics. People get in that aren't always managers, and this job is a management position.
Yeah. And Lauren, what's your life like in relation to this?
So I'm going to echo a lot of what Noreen said. I think that there are pros and cons either way. But I think the 2-year term for a first selectman is incredibly short and it's a really quick learning curve. But that's why I do support in the prior section of the charter, extending the term start date and having that person have more interaction with the outgoing first selectman.
Yeah, I like that.
What, Noreen?
I like that.
Lauren, I
Yeah.
can't hear you.
You can't hear me at all? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
can't. Okay, it's my problem.
Can I ask a quick, Lauren, before you go on? Do we have any idea if all the other towns that we've looked at, if all selectmen have 4-year terms? If they go that way, or is it all or nothing? Do you know that?
Let me pull up the report.
By the way, when I said it's impeachment, it's recall. It is possible to have a recall
Okay, yeah.
procedures.
I mean, we're redoing the charter. I mean, we can hedge our bet and make it 3 years if we really want to.
Well,
Just
sure,
quickly,
Gregory. Well, you want to get it on an election cycle though with municipal elections. That's the only problem with that.
Yeah, no, I know.
But not a bad idea.
I don't know why this document won't let me sort it.
Well,
Looks like
So
there are
just-
4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, but 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, more 2s,
I'm
bunch of
surprised.
2s,
I'm surprised how many Jews. I'm really surprised.
2. So far I've seen 3 4s. First elected town
Durham.
meeting, 4 4s.
You know what the fact is? Somebody said it, you can vote them out. That's that's the democracy piece of it. You don't like them, you vote, you're not stuck with them, you vote them out. Because we give 4-year terms to Board of Ed and Board of Finance.
Mhm.
It's just the ones that really run the town that don't. I'm very surprised by these numbers.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that for all the reasons that you pointed out, Noreen. I mean, once you get settled, I mean, at least if you're par level for a select person or even better, then how much can you actually get accomplished if after 1 year of learning, you're going back into the election cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like from all the discussions too, the things that we've talked about, and even just now, is one, the stability of the staff And especially, you know, staff that's been there a long time and you want to kind of keep that in place. And the question becomes, you know, I would assume it's a challenge even for the staff when somebody's changing every 2 years, if that's the case. So it kind of has, you know, both sides of it, but is there something to be, you know, put in place that would give more stability to making sure we don't lose good staff?
Well,
And
that's where Liz, that's the town administrator that we've all talked about. It was something we've
Right.
been looking at for years, and I don't know why we lost sight of it, but that was something that would give the continuity, but it would also give people their 2-year term if they want changes.
right. So I mean,
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems like there are a few other factors in play other than just, you know, looking solely at a 2 to 4 year term. It seems like
Right.
there might be some other things to consider as it relates to how long the term is. I mean, again, I'm just trying to put them into the buckets of what's good about a 2-year term, what's bad about a 2-year
Yeah.
term, and what's the impact of staff, what's the impact of the town? And then obviously this year or last year was probably one of the most unique years ever. And, you know, someone gets in and a couple of weeks later, they're dealing with the executive orders, pandemic and yada, yada. I mean, hopefully that won't happen again for another 100 years, but so.
Yeah, I definitely think this is not something that you guys are going to answer tonight.
Yeah, so this should probably go into the parking lot, the
Yeah.
big hairy things, right? So,
Yes.
you know, 2-year with a town administrator, 4-year, maybe incorporate what Bob's talking about with recall procedures. You know, for the fear that Noreen brings up, you know, that what if we got a bad egg in?
Yeah, no, this
I
is
think
definitely,
the
I would say
question
this is
of,
probably one of the biggest issues. Sorry, Rob.
No, I'm just saying Noreen, I think your comment about things to do to provide stability for staff is important. But I don't know, there's other ways, and I'm not the first person to say this, to address this besides the 2 or 4-year term.
You're right, and I totally agree. You know, if you look at Madison's history, and I don't think we're unusual compared to other small towns, I'm talking the senior staff here, the senior level, we keep people a long time. And quite often they become residents of the town and they're part of our community. So it's a history, and we've been fortunate. And you can, you know, you start to fool with that a little bit and keep people, and the morale just flips overnight. And I've seen it, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it happen. And so I just would really want to prevent that from happening again. And I get the continuity piece, but there's both sides that, well, and you're right, Lauren, we're not going to side tonight, but we've got to really have this conversation
Yeah.
as a whole, with the whole charter, not just this one issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, well, I want to be respectful of time. Do you want to keep going? It's 6:02. Do we want to do another section or another, the 4.11, or do we want to?
I would think about maybe just calling it here, just because we are missing 2 people from our
Yeah,
team.
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, hopefully, I'm not sure I could have the same kind of input that Joe did, but hopefully.
Liz,
I have to say, I think it was much quicker. It was nice.
Exactly, yeah.
Don't tell him that.
I
Oh,
won't.
no.
whenever I would
Lauren,
take over.
one thing Joe would say, is there anybody there from the public?
Oh, good
There-
idea.
No, we had one public member and they have left. So we.
It was so boring,
I thought, oh my God, who's this other person doing it?
exactly, yeah. Right.
Do
Liz, you did
I
a
have
great
any-
job, Liz.
Yes.
Thanks. Anyone want to
Absolutely.
make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, everybody, have a
Stay
good rest
safe,
of the
folks.
week.
You
Good
guys are
night.
good.
Thank you. Thank you all.